All right, guys, so we're finally to the quadratic formula. So there's nothing really to do about this except memorize it. X equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. Yes, I do expect you to memorize that. So now, let's see where that came from. So if we have a standard quadratic, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, we've learned how to solve that, right? We can complete the squares on it. So let's do that. Except instead of having numbers, we're just going to leave them as variables, a, b, and c. So hang on one second. So first thing we can do is isolate c. So get that to the other side. I'm going to subtract c from both sides. Equal negative c. After that, we need to divide through by a.
Help me lift me up.
Sorry about that. So we need to divide everybody by a. So that's what I'm going to do next. Yeah, same steps we've been doing. So that'll cancel out. We get x squared plus, I'll call it b over ax equals negative c over a. Okay, so first thing we did, we got c to the other side, we divided through by a. Now we need to find out what to add to both sides to complete the square. So we take our b term, that would be b over a in this case, and we're going to divide it by 2. Well, if you divide a fraction by 2, it's just multiplying 2 to the denominator. So I'm going to do that, b over 2a. We need to square that. Top part's b squared. Bottom part would be 4a squared. So now we need to add that to both sides. Okay. X squared plus b over ax plus b squared over 4a squared. So I added this to the left side. I also need to add it to the right side. Negative c over a plus b squared over 4a squared. So we added the same thing to both sides. We didn't change any the value of either thing. It's the same equation. It's still true. Now we need to factor the left side and combine these two guys together. Well, to add fractions, we have to have a like denominator, right? Okay, we're going to take care of that. So this part, it's really easy to factor. It's a perfect square trinomial. Because we completed the square, we know that's true. So it's x plus half of this thing. Squared. One second. All right. So in order to add these two things together, I'm going to need a like denominator. So I'm going to rewrite this guy, b squared over 4a squared. I want them on the left side just to make my life a little easier. Sure, that works. But instead of minus c over a, I need to have it something with a denominator of 4a squared. So I multiply this by 4a. That'll give me 4a squared, right? So I need to do the same thing to the top part. So 4a times the c. All right. Let me get this little weird piece out of there. There we go. So now I need to square root both sides. But before I do that, let me go ahead and say that I'm going to combine these to have the same denominator. I'm just going to put them together in a second. So I am going to square root both sides. And don't forget, whenever we take a square root, we must do plus or minus. So this side, square root and square cancel, that's easy enough. It's going to be plus or minus the square root. Now let's see what happens if I put these together. That's going to be v squared minus 4ac over 4a squared. Now remember, you can separate the numerator and denominator whenever you're taking a square root. So I can call it the square root of the numerator over the square root of the denominator. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to change this. It's the square root of my numerator and the square root of my denominator. Okay. So I'm just going to copy this left side down one more time. Now the square root of the numerator, that's not nice. I'm just going to leave it alone. Square root of b squared minus 4ac. The denominator, though, I can do that. The square root of 4 is 2. The square root of a squared is just a. Okay, that's nice. Now I need to get x by itself, so I'm going to subtract b over 2a. So it's going to be x equals negative b over 2a. So I subtracted it from both sides. Plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And since they have the same denominator, I can combine them. And instead of writing a whole other step for that, actually, I can combine our numerators together. And we're left with x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. That is, in fact, the quadratic formula. Negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. You're not going to have to derive it. It's already been derived for you. All you have to do is memorize it. And yes, I do expect you to memorize it. There's no getting around it, okay? Now, the most you're going to have to do with it is memorize it and then apply it. So let's practice applying it. Here's a hint. To help you memorize something, write it down every freaking time. Let's see. X equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That's the quadratic formula. Write it down every time. Now when you're starting, it might be helpful to just write out what a, b, and c are. It is in standard form. You got to check that. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. It's got to equal 0. If it doesn't equal 0, make it equal 0. Put it in standard form first. So if I do that, a is 1, b is 2, and c is negative 63. Don't forget your signs. From here, you're just plugging it in. X equals negative b, which is 2. So you can put it in parentheses if you need to. If b is negative, it's going to be negative negative 2, whatever. Just plug it in. If you're bad at plugging things in, just put everything in parentheses. Here, I'll do it this time. B squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now it has the plus or minus here, so it is going to get us our two answers. Let's simplify it first, though. So -2, that's just -2. 2 squared is 4. Negative makes a positive. 4 times 63, that's 252. Let me get my calculator. Hang on. All right, guys, so let's see.
Are you?
Let's see, 252. And that's all going to be over 2 times 1 is 2. -2 plus or minus, combine those like terms. Square root of 256 over 2. Don't forget your x equals.
You want to come to the table? Come here.
Square root of 256, 16. I'm not going to make you do the factor tree for these. So x equals -2 plus or minus 16 over 2. Now that we simplified as much as possible, we're going to split it up and find our two answers. So first, x equals -2 plus 16 over 2. Second, x equals -2 minus 16 over 2. And now I can finally just type the dang thing in the calculator. Up to this point, we had the plus or minus sign, so you couldn't just type it in. So that one's -9. X equals -9. This one I'm just going to go back and change that to a minus, and you get 7. This is the work I expect from you. Yeah, no shortcuts or anything on this one. You're going to practice it, and you're going to practice it until you learn it. Now, you can check yourself using this calculator, and on the ACT, I really expect you to use this calculator, and go to mode 5-3. And from there, you can type in your coefficients. 1, 2, -63. And it'll give you 7 and -9 instantly. But for now, I need you to practice using this formula. I need you to learn this formula. Because sometimes you won't just have numbers, so you got to know how to use this formula. Okay? So write down your quadratic formula every single time. If you don't, you probably won't remember it when it comes test time. Now, I use capital letters because they're easier for people to read. If you prefer using lowercase letters, that's fine. A lot of people use lowercase letters. I'm just better at writing capital letters. Let's see, A is 6. B is -11. And C is -10. Now, this formula will always work. There are no cases of a quadratic that this will not solve. Just letting you know. So that is by far my favorite method because it's the most reliable method. And if you go to math facts, it doesn't kick that out. X equals, let's plug it in. This time, I'm just going to drop off the parentheses. This one I am going to put parentheses because it's being squared. I'll just put parentheses. Plug in your numbers. All of that is over 2 times A. Make sure you put it over everything, not just a piece. Simplify that. Feel free to use a calculator for that part. 240. In fact, I'm going to double check myself. I know it's 11 squared, but 4 times 6 times 10. It's 240 plus 121. It's 361 in a second. Oh, that's over. Oops. Oh, that's going to be over 12. So x equals 11 plus or minus square root of 361. Oops, 61 over 12. I don't know if that has a nice square root. It does. So yeah, if you know your perfect squares, this saves you a lot of time too. You will not always get a nice number out of here though. I'm pretty sure the next one's going to be kind of nasty. Once we get it down to the plus or minus, we simplified everything as much as we can split it up. 11 plus 19 over 2, and here's how I'm going to write this time. Comma, 11 minus 19 over 12, sorry, 12. Make sure you copy it down correctly. Then we type that in. 5 halves. Negative 2/3. And those are our answers. Now, this is just pure math. Sometimes we're going to be applying these to real-world situation. And if we're looking at like the time it takes for a ball to hit the ground, one of your answers might be negative, and obviously that wouldn't be a correct answer because you can't have negative time. So as of right now, you will always have 2 answers, even though they're not the same thing. But later, whenever we have context around it, one of your answers, or even both of your answers, might not make sense. Okay, look at this guy. What's wrong with it? It's not standard form. Fix it. A few more. Okay, write out my quadratic formula. These problems do take a few minutes to do, so don't be in a hurry. A is -1. Make sure you watch your signs. Plug it in there. -1 times -1. Okay. Simplify this. That's going to be a 4. That's going to be a minus 4. That's going to be over -2. Oh, hey, 4 minus 4 is 0, right? What's the square root of 0? 0. So you're adding and subtracting nothing. So we're just going to not worry about it. So our answer is just a plain old 1. We have one answer here. It's called a double root. And in a little bit, we're going to talk about the discriminant. This guy under here tells us everything we need to know about our answers, except the answers themselves, of course. Yeah, that's the discriminant. X is 1. Next. Let's see. Yeah, that's all those. Let's see. Okay, we'll do 4, 6, and 12. 4, 6, 12, sure. So again, not standard form. Negative 6x squared. I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. Plus 3x plus 15 equals 0. Yeah, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I know my quadratic formula. So I'm going to just copy and paste it next time. XA is negative 6, B is 3, C is 15. Plug them in. I'm going to go ahead and just stick them in parentheses. 4 times A times C. So the only way to really get good at this is by practicing. All you're doing is plugging numbers into a formula. You've been doing that since you were in the elementary school. Just different formulas. 9. 2 negatives makes a positive. 60 times 6 is 360. Double check that, because if you make an arithmetic error, it messes everything up. You don't want to make arithmetic errors. Use your calculators. Just use them. 60, yep. There's nothing wrong with grabbing a calculator. I'm just showing your work. It's 369 if my handwriting sucks, which it does. Well, and again, just take it and plug it in. I don't need you to show me the factor tree now. 3 squared roots of 41. I will do the factor tree on this one only, just for those people that for some reason don't have the Casio FX15ES Plus, like I told you to get from the beginning of the year several times. You're in my class, you're expected to be going to college, so it'd be a great calculator for there too, and it's cheap. All right, 369. Let's pretend you don't have a Casio FX15ES Plus, and you have to do this by hand. 2 doesn't work, but 3 does. That's going to go 1, 2, 3. And if you didn't know, that's 3 times 41. 1 plus 2 is 3 plus 3 is 6, so I know that's by 3. Divisibility rules, yay. And I know for a fact that 41 doesn't break down. It's, yeah, no, it doesn't. So I got 3, 3, and a 41. Square root of 3 times 41. Got a pair of 3's there. Again, you do not have to show this unless you just don't have the right calculator. You do have to simplify these. And there you go. See, same thing. 3 squared is 41, 3 squared is 41. That's the calculator gave me. Now there's nothing else I can do here, so I'm going to go ahead and split it up. X equals -3 plus 3 square root of 41. And to save yourself some time, you don't have to, but you can, split up your denominator now. Notice how we have an irrational number. If these guys are not like terms, just go ahead and split up the denominator. If this is irrational, or if this is imaginary, or whatever, split it up. Because you're going to do that in the next step anyway. You might as well save yourself some time. And just simplify it. 3/12 is 1/4. Of course, you can use your calculator. Fourth. Now this is a positive, that's a negative, so it's going to be a negative. 3 and the 12 are like terms, cannot mess with this thing under the radical. So that's going to be a 4th, so I'm not going to bother with the 1. There we go. This is how you'd write it. You wouldn't combine them. You leave it like that. That's a 4th. And obviously this is going to be the same thing with a different sign. Negative makes a positive. It's important to note that this whole thing is over 4, not just 41. It's square root of 41, and then that square root of 41 is over the 4. The 4 is not under your radical. Don't put it there. And that's my answer. This is one answer. This is one answer. That's the other answer. Nothing else you can do with those. Move on. Let's see. All right, so this one's going to be nice and quick. 8x squared minus 10x 0. Quadratic formula. Doesn't matter what kind of equation you have, the quadratic formula will work. That's a really funky looking 8, but it's an 8 for A. C in this case is 0. Plug it in. Okay, all over 2 times 8. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, if A was 0, then that would be a 0 in the denominator. So that's one case when it wouldn't work for quadratic. Well, if A was 0, it wouldn't be a quadratic. Now it would. If you didn't have an x squared term, it would be linear. So yes, it works for any quadratic. And if it's a quadratic, your A won't be 0. That's going to be positive 10 plus or minus square root of, well, that's just 0, so that's gone. That's 100 over 16. X equals 10 plus or minus 10 over 16. Go ahead. Break it up. Some of you might be wondering, how do you know when to stop? Well, until you don't have any more like terms to combine. Here I got integers. I can combine those. On the previous one, I had an integer and an irrational number, square root. You can't combine those. You're done. You go until you can't go anymore. Type that in the calculator. 10 plus 10 over 16 is 5/4. I'm not going to bother typing the next in the calculator. it's 0. 10 minus 10 is 0 over anything is 0 still. And there you go. Can I pause it? Let me check something real quick. Yep, 12 is what I want to do. Okay. I'm back. So, quadratic formula. Get it in standard form. A is 5. E is -4. C is 4. So I'm going to give you a lot of these to practice, and I do expect you to practice them because there's no way you're going to learn these unless you practice. Okay. Numbers and simplify. X equals, it's going to be +4 plus or minus square root. It's going to be 16 minus, that's 20 times 4 is 80. Go ahead, use your calculator for safety. 4 times 5 times 4. Yes, I know I dropped off the negative sign, so that's -80. 10. Okay. X equals 4 plus or minus. Oh, wait a minute. Let me check that. 60 minus 80. That's a -64. Oh my goodness, what am I going to do with that? It's a negative under the radical. I try and type that in the calculator. It gives me this error. Oh no. Yeah, go to mode 2. Or take a factor tree, or just realize, hey, that's 64, which is 8, and then negative, so 8i. Oops, go to mode 2. 8i. This is why we talked about our complex numbers beforehand and simplifying square roots. So this is a real number. This is an imaginary number. Together they make a complex number, but they're not like terms, so you can't combine them. However, I don't want you to leave it as plus or minus. I want you to split it. Oops, sorry. So go ahead, split it up. 4 over 10 plus 8i over 10. 4 over 10 minus 8i over 10. Simplify that. X is 2/5 plus 4 I over 5. You can use a calculator to simplify the fraction if you want. And 2/5 minus 4i 5. All right, guys, that's it. That's the quadratic formula. I do expect you to have it memorized for the test this week sometime, probably Friday-ish. You're not going to be given the formula. I expect you to show your work. So if you don't memorize the formula, how are you going to use the formula? Okay? Memorize your formula. Learn how to apply the formula. Practice. Bye.